This is the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Kendall of the notaballerina.com travel blog. Every episode I'll share travel tales from several fellow travel lovers, and together we hope to entertain and inspire you, remind you of some of your own great travel experiences, and encourage you to hit the road again soon. Hello and welcome to episode 267 of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Today's topic is about specialised group travel. So not just any old group trips. I'm sure that a lot of you will feel a bit like me in that you have traditionally been reluctant group travellers, but perhaps like me also discovered that there are particular kinds of group trips which are actually fabulous and something you might choose over independent travel. So I talked to three guests today who have all been involved in running group tours or owning companies which run group tours. So they have a fair bit of experience in it, but funnily enough, they have a fairly common thread of being previously anti-group travel. So I think group travel does get a bad name. I always imagine the whole hopping on a Contiki bus with 50 others, one city per night, etc. Although, it has its place too. I know Justin, my co-host for the book club, had that as his first major travel experience, and it was enough to send him on his way and give him the confidence to actually, keep traveling. So, there's a reason for all kinds of these things. But today we're talking about, specialised group travel, special reasons to form a group. And I think that there are lots of varied reasons to get a group of people together to go somewhere. In fact, in the next year or two, kind of COVID depending amongst other things, I am actually hoping to run a couple of Thoughtful Travellers tours. They will be very, let's call them super specialised, because I intend them to be fairly infrequent and very customised, because really they're a way for me to travel in a thoughtful way and take some of you guys with me. So that's kind of super specialised. But a decade back, I would absolutely never have imagined I'd be even contemplating it. So yeah, things change, and I really think there are some particular reasons that you want to travel in a group that make it incredibly worthwhile. And that's kind of what we're exploring with these three guests today. So, my first guest is Evan Petrelis, who is the owner of Renaissance Tours. So, they run very specialised tours for people with very specialised interests, with very specialised guides. Could I say the word specialised anymore? I don't think I could. But in any case, I chatted to Evan about how that had all come about for him.
Before I acquired Renaissance Tours back in 2017, if anybody had asked me whether I would be interested in traveling as a group, I would most likely have said no. And part of the reason for that is that I'm a self-confessed introvert. So I love being on my own quite a lot. And in fact, I need to be quite alone for much of my time. Doesn't mean to say that I'm not sociable and don't enjoy being with people, but I find that I often get my energy with periods of being alone. So traveling as part of a group of others, to me, would have sounded quite daunting. However, when I did become involved with Renaissance Tours and have had the wonderful privilege of being able to travel with our groups to various parts of the world for different kinds of things, I have become a complete convert in terms of the benefits of traveling as part of a group. Of course, there are also disadvantages, and I'll touch on that in a short moment. But first, to the lessons that I've learned, having traveled now as part of a group, and ones that would be considered advantages. The first thing is, first and foremost, is that you're traveling in the company of like-minded others. But I don't think that aspect of travel can ever be undervalued. The sense of satisfaction and the comfort of knowing that you're with others who understand your language, who are in the same wavelength as you are. You don't need to explain any particular concept to, that for others might not necessarily be assumed, is just a wonderfully rewarding kind of experience to be with. So that to me is first and foremost the greatest thing about traveling as part of a group. That's the company of like-minded others. The second one is if you are being led by a tour leader, it's then benefiting from the expertise and the knowledge of that particular tour leader. In our case, all of our tour leaders are subject matter experts. They're curators, gardeners, authors, musicians, performers. So they come with very, very specific areas of expertise and knowledge. And when you are traveling with expert tour leaders, they very generously impart their knowledge with the group, so that you are in effect on this accelerated learning curve while you're on a tour in the company with like-minded others and being led by a knowledge expert. So those are the two big advantages that I see to traveling as part of a group. And sorry, there is one other one. That is the access that you get to people and places that you would normally not be able to get access to if you were trying to do something on your own. And there's a wonderful sense and feeling of exclusivity that you get where you're traveling with a group of people, and it was by the virtue of the contacts of the particular tour leader that you were able to get backstage, for instance, to meet from that night's performance, or access to a private garden, which is this beautiful treasure that no one else would get to see were it not for the friendship of the tour leader, he or himself being a gardener and another fellow gardener. So it's those kinds of wonderful money can't buy experiences that you find yourself being the beneficiary of. And it's again realizing that it would only really be because you were in that group that you'd experience that. Maybe on the not so great part of things about traveling a group is, of course, what you are benefiting in terms of access to people and places, the knowledge of your tour leader and the company of like-minded others. You're maybe sacrificing a little bit of the independence that you might have if you were doing things on your own. So given that it's a group of people, there needs to be some sort of commonality of arrangements. You need to be at a certain place at a particular time, and the coach does need to depart at a particular time. The performance does start at this time, and we do need to be at an airport at that particular time to get a flight to another place. So there's less of that freewheeling spirit that one might have been used to or got used to in one's past when the world was still your own personal oyster. And I would say really that's probably the only disadvantage, if one could call it that way. Not everybody sees that as a disadvantage, of course, as well. Most people see the fact that we have all the accommodation organized, all the coach transfers, your tickets to operas, the admission to a garden, all prearranged, as a great advantage. And what you might sacrifice in terms of some sort of spontaneity, you're actually getting in terms of convenience in being able to do things then much more quickly if you're having to make it up all the way as you went along.
Yeah, that's true. It does eliminate a certain level of stress, doesn't it? When I have travelled in a group arrangement, that even though my overall preference is an independent trip, but when I've been able to kind of hand over that responsibility for all that organisation, I kind of feel like I'm cheating, but it feels really good sometimes. So.
And it gives people the peace of mind, that you know that things are going to be taken care of. So what you can then do is sit back and focus on what's actually happening before your eyes, rather than wondering where you're going to be spending the night tonight, or where you might be needing to feed yourself. And the other great advantage, I suppose, too, is the fact that the itineraries are meticulously researched. So all of that research work and all that upfront work that you might necessarily have spent hours and hours having to do on the internet has actually been curated for you by your tour leader in conjunction with ourselves as the tour operator. And then we've put the arrangements in place for you to benefit from all of that upfront work.
So there are, as Evan suggested, quite a few advantages and a few disadvantages for travelling in a group. But definitely I think there are significant advantages when you want to do something specialised with really like-minded people. as he mentions. Now, on the same kind of note, but, well, a bit of a tangent, I suppose, I also chatted with Debbie Clark about this. You might remember Debbie from last week's episode about LGBTQIA travel. And so we chatted a bit further about some of the experience, or some of the reasons, I guess, why traveling in a group situation has been really quite life-changing for some of the people who have come on her group tours.
Because my company has taken care of LGBTQ travelers, we've had a real range. One thing that people often don't think about is, all the colors in the rainbow, all the letters of the LGBTQ plus. We're all really, really different. And there's no one, we're not really one market. We're multiple different demographics within that rainbow. And so that means that the people that we're serving, the guests that we're taking care of, are really, really different, and their needs are really different in terms of, what they're looking for in a safe and meaningful travel experience. So we've had some travelers that are deeply, deeply closeted at home, that they're not out at all.
Wow.
And so when they join our group tour, the experience for them to live completely openly for those 2 weeks on holiday is,
wow.
We forget.
That gives me goosebumps.
I know, right? and to be fully embraced and loved and celebrated for who they are as an openly lesbian woman on a group tour with 10 other, women who are living for that time at least. It's so sad in some ways, but it's also an opportunity for them, again, to see what life can be. And people have different reasons for staying, hidden. But for that short time, at least, they're able to live 100% of themselves and be celebrated for who they are.
Oh.
So that's always been something that's been really special to me. And connect them with, we always have a girls' night out with some of the local lesbians in one of the towns we go to. And it's just amazing to see these women who have perhaps not had that experience before just shine and just be in awe of, other vibrant women who are living their lives so openly. So I think there's real value in that, and it brings me immense joy.
Oh,
yeah.
That is really life-changing. We talk a lot about how travel changes you, and to be able to change your life that much, even if it's only for that 2 weeks that you're on tour, but that must give them so much, I don't know, power, food for thought, all sorts of like long-term impact from that experience.
Some of those women are still write to me regularly, and still want to come back to New Zealand, and I think have shifted how they how they live in their own life at home, even if it's in a small way, it's it provides sort of a glimpse into what can be. Those group trips are amazing.
Wow.
Everyone inevitably on the women's trips, everyone inevitably shares their coming out story. Like, that is something that's really common on all my group trips.
Wow.
It's a shared experience that is really different for each and every one of us. But it's always we make time for that. It usually happens organically, but it's usually on the first or second night, usually at the beginning. And so deep bonds are developed really quickly, which is always amazing. So that's the power, I think, of why there's a need for these companies to exist. It's not to say that companies who don't specifically serve LGBT travelers can't create that as well, with the right guide and with the right conditions set up. And there's more companies doing that, which I think is really hopeful too. So
no, that's true. There are some really interesting small group offerings out there now, and I think finding different way, or if they can draw together like-minded people, and the like-mindedness is in all sorts of different ways,
right.
then I think you can often have those really bonding experiences in varying different ways. I used to be so anti-group travel like years ago, and then I realized that the group tour I had in mind was the Kon-Tiki bus around Europe kind of horror.
Absolutely.
And that there's actually some really amazing people who bring together all sorts of people in very different ways, and and that can be that's like adds a whole extra level to your travel experience. So
I was like you, I was very anti-group travel, because I hadn't really done it I mean, I was a backpacker, and so creating and creating group trip was like, okay, now how do I want to do this so that it's not like you say, like a 50 people on a bus looking out the window, that it's actually really facilitated group process that results in amazing lifelong friendships. So it's been it's a lot of fun.
Absolutely love the unintended, as Debbie told me later, result of the group tours that she ran. Really very life-changing and really impressive to hear about. So my final guest today is Vicky Sahami, who runs some very specialised tours to take people to see total solar eclipses. And I think that this is such a cool way to explore very random parts of the world. And so I asked Vicky to tell me how it all got started.
Back in '99, I started, and earlier than that, I was hired on as an astronomer to be the official astronomer on an eclipse tour to Venezuela. This was in '97, I think. And so I did that, and I realized doing that it was a perfect blend of the two things that I love most in this world, which is astronomy and travel, and that I should be doing this. And so I did. I started a business, and I have been taking groups of people to see total solar eclipses. And I've been teaching since I was 10. And so teaching has always been part of my life as well. So it just was a natural fit, and all the years of experience as a tour guide and all that sort of stuff. So it was just easy for me. Other astronomers are terrified at the thought of guiding people and talking to people. But
yes, of course.
For me,
yes.
I'm a little bit
both skill sets. So yeah.
Yeah, I was the black sheep in my family when I studied science. So it's a much more. I came from a much more gregarious background, and so it's not a problem for me. But anyway, we lead people to see total solar eclipses. So around the world, wherever they are, about once every, on average 18 months. Wow. We get to take ourselves somewhere really interesting. And then, of course, for me, it's armchair traveling for 5 years in advance, trying to plan and think and try and figure out exactly where the best place along the path is going to be, and stressing about the clouds. And it takes you places you would never go. That's
the beauty of it. I love it because it's out of your control of where you're going to go to some extent. But you get to, like, how exciting. It's like you're forced to go to all these random cool places.
Well, and it is. And the people who chase them are often people who are really interested in astronomy. So there are a lot of times amateur astronomers, and normally you get a lot of like heavy on the kind of engineering type of person. And then they bring their spouse or their kids or whatever. So you do kind of get this sort of person traveling who, I would like to point out, is not your normal traveler. Right. People like that normally sit in their cubicles and do their job and never go anywhere. And so to get these people out in the first place is so fun, and to see them. And then they end up in these places where no one else goes, right? They're not going to Paris, and having a cafe on the, whatever.
Near the Eiffel Tower.
Anyway, they're not doing that. They're going to Western Mongolia and sleeping for a week without a toilet. I mean, that's what they're doing. So it's just a blast. It's so much fun.
Fabulous. Do you have a favorite, or I don't know?
People always ask me that, and it's always hard because every single one of them has their own things. I mean, we've been to Turkey twice. We've been to Australia twice. Once in Woomera, actually. When I saw that an eclipse was ending up in Woomera, I'm like, I know exactly where to go, and I know which hotel to get.
It can't be too many.
There's only one, and if you don't get it, you're in the barracks. So they have an army barrack that they used, and I was like, I don't want to put people up in an army barrack. So I got in touch with them early, and I knew exactly which rooms to request. So that was fun. But China. We did China. We did. Trying to think. Mongolia really stands out because it was so unusual, and it's a place I didn't really think about going before that, but now the memory of it. I mean, this whole place, they have very little infrastructure. There's only about 15 kilometers of paved roads in the entire country, and it's mostly around Ulaanbaatar, which is the capital. And as you go out, it's just dirt roads connecting everything. And then, of course, when you have a dirt road, if there's a pothole, you go to the side of it. So the dirt roads end up looking like these giant river deltas from the air. And we were going on this one road, and there was another car that we saw, and you could see the dust plume. and it was about 5 kilometers away across a valley. And I said, where are they going? What road are they on? And the guy driving said, that's our road. We're on the same road.
Oh, no.
Just on that part of it over there.
Oh, my goodness.
We were all just going in the same direction.
Wow.
So it's a pretty amazing place. Easter Island was spectacular.
I bet.
Yes,
oh my
I know.
Gosh.
That one was great. And that was very challenging because it was just that little piece of land that was getting the eclipse. So getting there, everything was triple the price. There were a lot of logistics. Svalbard, Norway was a fascinating one because
I'd love to go there. Wow.
That one, when we were there, they had polar bears that had attacked a tourist the day before.
Oh no.
So in order to protect this influx of tourists and all of us standing outside in sub-zero weather, they had these people on snowmobiles circling us the entire time to scare away the polar bears.
Wow.
And in that one, it was, we were convinced it was going to be rainy. I mean, all the forecasts showed rain, like 32 degrees. I'm speaking in Fahrenheit. I'm sorry. But it was 0 degrees and rain. That was the forecast, centigrade.
Yeah.
And when you look at that, you're like, oh God, I'm taking a plane full of people into a cloud. That's going to be great. And then that's really, good business on that one. Right. So we were flying up there. We left at like 3 a.m. It was a 5-hour flight and we flew over it was just clouds all the way up Norway. And then we got over Svalbard and we could see the mountains and the whole plane. And it was like, I don't know, 8:30 in. And the whole plane is just like, okay, cautious joy. Don't start thinking we're going to see it. Yeah, not yet. Because we were all convinced it was just going to be misery. And we land, there's not a cloud to be seen. The sun had risen.
Wow.
11 days earlier. So it's above the Arctic Circle. So when the sun rises, it just kind of just wheels around the sky for 6 months and then it goes down again.
Crazy.
So it's really an unusual place. And so the sun literally went sideways. It was the first time they'd seen the sun since it rose in 11 days. So
luck was on your side.
Oh, it was absolutely lucky.
Wow.
That was a close call. So, but we saw it and it was amazing.
I think if I was going to pick a kind of group tour to run, I would be staying away from solar eclipse tours, only because that risk of turning up and it all being cloudy would freak me out. I would be having nightmares for months and months ahead of time. But it sounds like Vicky and her guests have an awesome time. Now, funnily enough, her next trip is actually all the way here to Western Australia, but still a bit further north than me. There's a solar eclipse in 2023, which will be best seen from Exmouth Way up here. So that's kind of funny. And when we first chatted, we didn't realise that we had that kind of connection. So it was a lot of fun. Anyway, I hope that this has given you some food for thought, if you are, like me, a reluctant group traveller, to think about maybe there are some group trips that you might like to take, or just to, give you some ideas on other kinds of travel that you might like to do to kind of pursue one of your deep interests or learn something that you've really wanted to learn about. I think it's a great way to travel with, really lovely, like-minded people, hopefully, and usually, quite a different travel experience. So that's it for episode 267 of the Thoughtful Travel podcast, and a big thanks to all my guests. So I started off by chatting with Evan Petrelis from Renaissance Tours, and you can find out more about what they do at renaissancetours.com.au. I then chatted with Debbie Clark from the Good Awaits podcast. You can find that anywhere that you listen to podcasts or at goodawaits.podbean.com. And last but definitely not least, I chatted with Vicky Sahami, and her solar eclipse tour business is called Sirius Travel, SIRIUS travel.com. So yeah, if you want to come my way to Western Australia, you can pop in and see me in Perth on your way to seeing the solar eclipse up at Exmouth. Don't forget, we have our 2 groups. Our Facebook group for Thoughtful Travellers, just search for Thoughtful Travellers in Facebook and you'll find us there. We ticked over recently to 1,300 odd members, which is a bit fun. And yeah, such a lovely group. And LinkedIn group is slowly growing. The best way to find that is to go to notaballerina.com/LinkedIn. And all of these links and more will be in the show notes. For this episode, the show notes are at notaballerina.com/267. As always, thank you so much for listening. This has been another episode of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Show notes and other information are at notaballerina.com/podcast. Join me again soon for another chat about why we travel. Bye for now.